Okay, so now let's start with the complex height blend. Sorry if this looks a little different, but these are just how the files have been set up. But basically, we have our rust and our lime scale with the simple blend. If you bring in this metal texture, again in your texturing files, set it up how we've set it up before, remembering to turn the height from linear dodge to normal, and of course here set the color space to linear as well. After we've set that up, again remember we're working backwards, so top rust will be in the middle now and metal will be on the bottom. So what we need to do for this second height blend, we need to blend, we need to get the height information for these two here, the height blended height information basically. And for this we need an intermediary layer, a pass-through layer, which we're going to create here. Name it pass-through 1. And for your height, we're in the height layer. We're going to set this to pass through so that it picks up the height blended heights. And so now that we have that, we'll add an anchor point so that we can anchor this to the height blend later on. We're going to also add a levels, height levels again, so if we need to later we can adjust things. And here above this height blend we're going to need another anchor point, and we can name this rust height blend mask. And this is going to be our height blend mask. It's going to take this height blend and mean we can use this mask with the height blend of the next height blend. I'm saying height blend a lot, but hopefully it will make sense. So now what we do, same process as this, we're going to add black mask, fill layer, paint layer, set this to vivid light, add an anchor point, and here we add the height blend again. But now this is where it gets a bit different. So for this fill layer, what we want to do is set this. What do we want to do? Sorry, this can be a bit confusing. We set this to this rust height blend mask anchor point. And okay, so now when we go into height blend, what we're going to do is set the bottom height. What that's going to be is, well, it's not going to be the bottom, but it's going to be the top essentially with your rust and your lime scale, and we've got that as the pass-through layer here. So we're going to grab, put this anchor point above the levels height. Make sure you do that, so if any changes here, they're reciprocated into the anchor point here. Yes, so we're going to put the height bottom, we're going to make this the pass-through layer, the height bottom, and the current, that is just going to be the metal mask that we created just below the height mask. And now, hopefully, what should happen is we have the metal below our lime scale and our rust. So what you do now basically is with this paint layer, what you're essentially doing is, with this you may need to tweak your brush settings slightly, and also your height blend. Make sure this contrast is up. Go back to the paint. Okay, now we can see that the height is kind of bleeding through here. What we're basically doing is painting. We're erasing away the metal, and underneath we are showing through the rust texture. It is slightly awkward, I am aware of this, and no doubt someone else has come up with a much better way of doing it, but this is the way I have found basically. And again, painting may be a bit awkward with this. What can help is tweaking some of the levels with your height mask. So if we bring this down, might be a little bit easier. Yeah, it might be a little bit easier paint in the rust now. When using this system, you will, if you use it a lot, you will learn, all the little things, and you'll understand what you'll need to do if things just are being frustrating for you, and it can feel like you're fighting the tools a bit. But you can see now, you can see how we're building up the different layers, and you can get an idea of well, how you can continue basically layering different textures on top and keep going with it. It does get a bit complicated and confusing, but in the end you will be left with a pretty decent way of back blending multiple textures. Okay, so another thing that I did in my personal file is what we can do is we can experiment a bit more with the height blend, and if we add a fill layer here, we set the fill layer to attract, and if we take one of the textures that are provided with the files, the flake mask, as I've called it, which is, I believe it's just a peeled rust texture as a mask basically. If we add this as a paint layer and we set the opacity down a bit, it can make things a bit easier to paint on. And if I kind of demonstrate here, it will show you the areas of the peeled rust. Try to explain it properly. It's probably a easier to just show you. So if we don't have this fill layer, you can see parts of the rust texture aren't contrasting as nicely as they could be with the underlying metal. But when we add the flake mask, it will much more easily, you can see through. It basically makes it easier to paint, I feel, when you have this mask, because it basically it overlays, or well, it subtracts away slightly, because we've lowered the opacity here of the mask. So when you're painting in, it picks up those contrasting areas a bit more easily, and it creates a nicer transition for you. Sorry, I can't really explain that any better. It's something that you'll just have to see for yourself, really, and experiment with. But it's something I did, and I will show you that I did with my actual project, and it's something I just thought I should mention. Now, if you paint enough, just another thing I should mention. If you paint enough on this layer, it will actually remove. And again, all of this is controlled by the different levels of heights, so you may need to tweak this. You can actually remove the top layer as well, so the lime scale as well. Again, it's a bit fiddly, but you just tweak settings, you can get something that looks good out of it. Alright, so here, if I just group all these together and I hide them, here is one I did earlier. I'll just show you here. This has gone through various tweaks with heights, and what I've also done to make it a lot easier, I've created these individual height adjustment layers for each individual material and each individual texture, and basically I've masked out, or provided the mask for those materials. So the lime scale here, you can see this mask here is all the lime scale, so then I can tweak it with the levels, the height levels. And when you get into your renderer, or if you have the new updated substance beta, you can more easily see the different height levels. Or you can go into your height. If you go into your height channels, you can see your height levels here, and more easily tweak them if you need. But to get this mask, all I've done is just taken a fill layer of this right here, this rust height blend, just inverted it, and that will give you your bottom texture or your lime scale. Oops, sorry, this is the invert here, right? The lime scale here. This rust texture, you can see I've isolated the rust here. All I've done here, got two fill layers. One, I've used the same one, this same rust height blend mask, and I've just subtracted. You can see this is the mask here, and I've just subtracted away this metal height blend mask here that we did on the second height blend on the metal. and that will give you the rust mask. And then with the final metal height adjustment layer, we've just given it the straight metal height blend mask that we used here, and you will obviously have your mask sorted for you there for the metal. And of course we have the overall height adjustment here, which we can change because the base height levels are a bit intense, so you can just turn them down a bit so that it looks a bit more appealing. Right, so feel free to experiment with your own texture if you would like to. You know, play around with the settings, probably get something more efficient than what I've created even. If you do manage to, please do contact me, because I would love to know, because it's not the best method, I'm aware of this, but it's what I've used and it seems to have got the job done, even if it is a bit awkward. Okay, so now we'll just take a quick look at the actual project file for the actual prop, which looks a bit better than what I created before, and you can see all the techniques should be coming together, and you should be able to see now how I've created these blends. So again, you can see down here, we've gone through the same process. Here you can see this flake. This is, like I said before, this is where we added this flake mask, and maybe it will show, demonstrate how it's used. You can see here we use it to modulate the lime scale this time to give it a bit nice blend between the back of the skull, all these tiny little pockets. That may be a bit too difficult to actually paint in with this control here. And then we've, like we did before, we've done a pass-through layer, and again we got this flake layer here. Again, if I remove that, well, this completely removes the most of the rust. So it's basically how we get these nice contrasts, these big holes in the rust texture, and that looks pretty pleasing to the eye. After that, we've done a third height blend. So you can see we have the lime scale, the rust, this worn rough iron here, which you can just make out, and then we have a fourth set, which is actually a grouped texture of two textures of our base metals. You can see here the grouped texture, which again works exactly the same with height blend. You can just group two textures together. So we have these two textures here. This metal. And this more pitted metal here. And like I said, the height blend works exactly the same. I've done a few things, few extra things. Like I said, you can experiment. This is a slight bit of edge wear. So you can see we've worn away the edges a bit here to view the iron underneath. Which again, you should always be doing. You should always add those kind of imperfections, areas where you would expect to be worn away. And here we've, I think this is just a basic normal paint layer where you can paint away any imperfections or anywhere. So these little rivets here, I've just painted away the height blend, and because if you don't, it looks a bit naff. Another thing I've done with these metals is I've just added just a rough scratch pass on them, so you can see. Again, just simple fill layers. Nothing unusual, nothing complex. And you can see the mask here. You can see where they all are. So honestly, a very simple texturing file. This is basically the whole painter file. Because now all these two are a lighten and darken pass over the texture. What these basically do is just add a bit of variation to the textures so that they're not too uniform. So obviously, if you take a fill layer and you set it to overlay, and you can reduce the opacity, make the fill layer pure black, and you can just paint on areas. See, I've just painted on areas of the model where they will just darken, and it creates just a bit of surface discoloration, and you obviously want those areas of randomness. You don't want everything to be uniform, especially if you're dealing with procedural textures. You want to have variation. And the same thing with a light overlay. Again, very subtle, but it does make a big difference. See, you can also do this with warm and cold layers. So you could have this lighten, you could actually make it a warm color. It's a bit exaggerated, but you can see here, it kind of like warms the texture up. It gives it a warmer hue, and when you do this, warmer hues attract the viewer's eye more than cold hues. So just a neat little trick you can do is just add one of these overlay layers and just paint in some warm hues. It can be very subtle, but if you paint them on areas of the prop that you want people to focus on, generally it will help lead the eye a lot better. And on the opposite spectrum, cold hues, so if we use kind of like a blue, the eye is generally going to shy away from those areas. You know, that's just a very cheap, neat little trick you can use. And I haven't done it on this prop, but I did it with my other props. And after that, again, we've just got these individual height adjustment layers. We've been over that. Ignore this here. It was just kind of, at the time, I needed to remove the height information. Because, like I said before, do not use the normal information because it will override. I knew this too late. So I needed just an on-off switch basically for the height. So you can see the height information here on the model. And it looks obviously pretty ugly, so you'll know if you've done it wrong or right. And then just a basic levels adjustment layer. I haven't done anything with it, but it's always a useful thing to have. Another thing to note with different texture sets, you can see on this model I obviously have the actual inner cloth wrap. If I remove them, yeah, you can see I also had the neck guard on that as well. So if I remove that, they're essentially on different texture sets in Substance Beta. So what you need to do is use a free tool called Texture Set Combiner. This is just an awkward thing of Substance Beta, and trying to get to areas of the mesh which would be a bit awkward to paint otherwise. But if you use Texture Set Combiner, you can then combine these different texture sets into one texture set. I won't go into how to use that. But if you just Google Texture Set Combiner, you should find the top link. Yeah, that's basically how you do that. More things to note, just with texturing in general. You can see how I've tried. It's all about balance. That's why I always say it's all about balance with texturing. So you can see I've not just washed everything in loads of noisy areas. So like this, if this area was just covering the whole of kind of like the skull of the helmet, it would just look bad because your eye wouldn't know where to focus or lead. So I've really tried to localize the area. I've left this big swathe of metal here. It gives the eye somewhere to rest as well. Otherwise, it's just far too busy. And I've localized this area of. Oops. I've localized this bony, limescaly area to just the logical place, which would be the skull part of the helmet, and the metal parts I've localized to the sale, or the metal parts where you would expect to be. And I've tried to vary it up so this part is very flaky and very rusty. Whereas this, it's got a bit more of the lime scale. But I've kind of imagined that the helm was kind of like tilted on its side in the water, where it's got this lime scaly coating on this side. But this side here has been kind of sticking up outside of the water, so it's got a bit more generic rust on it. Again, it might not be most physically accurate, but if it looks cool, then just do it. I think it looks kind of cool. Right, so now that I've just got over that briefly, we're gonna export the maps. Export the texture that we created previously with the complex height blend, bring that into Marmoset, and try and light and render our scene.